Yay Networks.
We are all important to the organization, but I promise you the job will go on and we'll all be okay. It's really the end. I know we're all critical, but you can take a week away from it.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Welcome to this week's episode of the Dream Bold Adventure Travel Series. If you've been listening in, you've heard that we have had a series of weekly podcasts dedicated to travel and specifically wellness-focused travel. And we missed a couple of weeks in there, of course, with Labor Day and then Hurricane Ida, but we are back. We're actually at week 6 of our 12-part series. And a little bit of information about this Dream Bold series, this traveled series. So the Dream Bold series, it's an initiative launched by our Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions team to encourage and support us, the employees of Ochsner, to be bold and dare to dream. And we're fortunate that we're hosting this through Zoom each Monday at noon, but we're also recording it to go out to you guys through a podcast. So we're very specific that if there's anything that's shown, any graphics or visuals, we try to paint that picture for y'all on the podcast. But for the most part, all of our guests, all of the content we have, we're just talking through it. So it works perfectly. It's a seamless transition from the Zoom platform to podcast. But as you're listening, you'll hear us talking about maybe people putting in a comment on the chat or something like that. You're not missing anything. You don't look for what's happening on the podcast platform that you're listening through. That's all for the Zoom that we did live, and you're hearing it through podcast. The links, I'll include those in the show notes of this episode. So if there's different links or things that we talked about that we've added links to the Zoom, I'll have those on this podcast as well. But I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do that with our Ochsner team. And so this Dream Bold committee is based on the concepts outlined in the Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly, the overarching idea being that our successes and our focus and our work life don't have to be completely exclusive of our personal goals and dreams. And so there's throughout the year, the Dream Bold committee has different types of dreams and big goals that we are working with people to help give them the tools, give them the resources. There's financial well-being, there's mental well-being, there's physical well-being. And you'll hear that Scott Wonke and I are leading the Adventure Travel series. And throughout this, we've got a series of experts that are kind of weighing in on all these different elements of planning for travel, making the most of it. And today, I'm really excited. We actually have 2 HR experts. They're HR specialists with Ochsner Health. They're speaking some to what goes on as far as taking time off, et cetera, within the Ochsner system, but really putting that focus on talking with our bosses in general, why travel is so important, why taking time away is so important, not just personally, but also how our work life, how our professional life can benefit from this as well. So these are 2 HR specialists, Amber Sahlberg and Chelsea Perret, and they're experts in that, but they're also incredibly passionate about travel themselves. So they'll be sharing their own travel experiences, how their own travel has shaped their lives, how it's influenced the people that they have come to be and that they've grown into, and how they're continuing to do it and finding ways to be creative and in some cases involve family and what this picture looks like for them now. And then they'll shift gears and again talk with us about why it's so important, how many of us aren't taking the time off that we actually have, how much unused vacation is out there. You're going to be stunned. And then again, navigating what might feel like or might actually be really challenging conversations with our bosses. So with that, let's join in the Zoom. So welcome, y'all. It's been several weeks since we've had our adventure series. We had some interruptions. It's been, yes. I didn't even count, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Has it been 3 weeks already? Yeah. Wow.
If not even a little bit more, because I know we didn't do it. We were planning to go ahead and skip Labor Day Monday, which worked. So yeah, maybe it's been 3 weeks. Lots has happened. And I think a lot of us, because of this hiatus, a lot of people probably took these impromptu trips, impromptu travel that were very unplanned. We've been talking about all this, like you're going to, hopefully in the near future, we'll be taking some sort of cool trip and some getaway. I think many of us had a getaway. You didn't though, Scott. You stayed for Hurricane Ida.
Yeah, it was a nice sweaty vacation.
Of course, Scott, who's so resourceful, he can like build tables out of the trees in his backyard. Like, of course, Scott stays, and I'm sure your neighbors were grateful, friends, family grateful for any assistance.
There's a lot of work to be done. It was
Yeah.
good. It was good.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that because I gathered a lot of the down trees to make wood to build stuff. So yes, for me, it was fantastic.
Random question on that. Do you have to dry it and kind of process it and treat it? Yeah. It's not just, you can't just see that beautiful tree that you're sad that it's gone and build a table from that. There's a process.
Right.
Yes.
For all those of you who want to learn about travel, I can also talk to you about how to cure wood. That's another podcast.
Truly a jack of all trades. So a lot of us took unplanned trips, last minute trips. Some stayed like you. For us, we actually had, and I'll say this too, to our listeners, to our audience here live by Zoom, we're going to be joined in just a bit by our HR team. And this is our Ochsner HR team. But the topic today is
actually, are you guys on right now?
We're here.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
Yes.
We thought you guys might have that meeting going longer. So we had plenty of time to fill. Can I share a story
We
though?
scrambled to get on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Can I share a funny story that happened on our trip though?
Sure.
Okay. So y'all, and Amber, Chelsea, this will kind of give y'all time to settle in a little bit. I know it's kind of been a quick, rapid transition. So planned trips, unplanned trips. We had a vacation that was planned to fly out the Sunday of Hurricane Ida. So of course we changed it. We were fortunate enough that we were able to change our flight to Saturday. And so again, vacation, which ended up kind of being a weird feeling of a vacation because there's only so much you're relaxing as Ida's coming through. But after the aftermath, we were able to at least do some of the things that we had planned and why we were going there in the first place. But talking about travel and talking about planning and healthy travel, part of that starts with what are you eating or drinking along the way to get there? And so if you're driving, what's going to be in the car, what's going to be on the plane, if you're flying, whatever it is. And a lot of times people may say, well, this is kind of my like comfort food. But the way I look at it too is you want to feel as best as possible when you get to where you're going. So healthy, wellness focused travel starts with while we're actually on our way to that destination. Also, we were cleaning out our fridges, because we were trying to make it, we knew that we were going to try to get as much stuff out of our fridge as possible before Hurricane Ida as we were leaving. So I had some salmon. And I had cooked some. And so I put it in a Tupperware. And that's just kind of that's what I like to have for lunch or dinner. So I had grilled it on the skillet, didn't want it to go to waste, made it, cooked it, put it in a Tupperware. We're on the flight. And I'm like, I start to get hungry. I'm like, perfect time. I'm going to have my salmon, which by the way, food of any type like that, you can take through. So whatever you've got that might be leftovers, you don't want to waste it. You think it's going to be airplane food. You can get that through security. Liquids are limited, but you could have whatever kind of a food, homemade food dish, whatever, you could bring that in a little Tupperware, whatever it might be. I take the lid off the Tupperware and I'm in the middle seat. My husband's on the aisle seat and there's a guy, poor guy's got the window seat here next to me. So I take the lid off and I'm hungry. I'm ready. And you know how sometimes salmon anyway has a strong smell. This had... Maybe it was on its last day. It had a really strong smell. The people in the rows above us, I start to see them lifting their nose and they're sniffing. And then you see it go the row in front of us, the row in front of them. And I look behind. It's happening behind us. So it's like spreading through. Everyone's noses in the air. Then they call the flight attendant over. Someone calls the flight attendant and says, something is wrong. The flight attendant goes, they're checking the bathrooms.
Oh
They're checking the bathrooms. They open it. They stick their head in there. They're smelling into the bathroom. They look back at the plane. Arms are up. They're like to the whole plane. I don't know where this is coming from. I'm eating it as fast as I can. The guy next to me knows like I'm the culprit. Brad is mortified. So I tried to get rid of the evidence as soon as possible. That's my story of planning and healthy travel snacks.
So there's an unwritten rule about when you rent a bus about the bathroom. There should be an unwritten rule about eating fish on a plane. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
It's so true. All right. So with that, want to welcome Amber and Chelsea. HR specialists, y'all know them through our Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions. For those who are listening in on podcasts, Amber and Chelsea are HR experts, go-to experts for all things under the Ochsner system. But what they're going to be talking with us today is, the importance of travel for our own personal wellness, the importance of travel for our personal development, our professional development, and also things like how to navigate these conversations that might feel really difficult with your boss, Not everyone feels like they can take time off. And so, or they feel like maybe guilty if you do or something.
Definitely the guilt.
I know like right now, Scott, you have so many different departments and you've had a lot of transition after Ida putting everything back together. I can imagine right now if you decided, even if you had a pre-scheduled vacation right now, it might feel pretty impossible to take.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But now I'm learning that it's very important to take care of the machinery. So if I don't get a break, then I'm going to break down, and nobody wants me to break down. I hope not.
Amber, Chelsea, welcome. Do you guys mind sharing just a bit about yourself, your own travel experiences, kind of share with our viewers, our listeners about you and why we brought y'all here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. Chelsea, we've tried our flow, y'all. This is our first podcast, so thank you for the grace. I think I go first, Chelsea. I'm looking at you okay. Well, good afternoon. It is 12:11. I am Amber Sahlberg. I've been at Ochsner just over 3 years, an HR director, and I have several divisions. Most recently came from Frito-Lay, which is not healthcare. Sorry, Molly. I know. I went over to a healthier side, hopefully. So when Molly and Scott talked to us, they really wanted us to lean in on why travel is important. And for, from the perspective of HR, we do try to make sure that we're upholding our culture and helping folks figure out what, the rules of the road are. And both Chelsea and I personally really value travel. So what we're going to do is just kick off with our personal travels. And I came from a really small island off the coast of Georgia and didn't do a lot of travel when I was younger. And then I guess I just made up for it since 18. And I've traveled and lived in a lot of places, and I'm going to go just for effect, the rundown on that. So from Georgia, went to school, University of Georgia, go Dogs. Then I moved around a lot. I moved into Tampa, Florida, back to Georgia for a minute, moved to Africa, Guinea, West Africa for the Peace Corps. And I was there for a couple of years. Traveled for a while after that, then moved to Charleston, South Carolina for kind of reassimilating into America. Moved again to Columbia, then Orlando, then the middle of nowhere, Georgia again, then Connecticut, Boston, and now New Orleans. So learned a lot in just living and uprooting. You really realize how little stuff that you need, especially after you lug it from place to place. So that was one reflection from moving. But I've also traveled internationally to 23 countries, and every one of them is unique and special to me in so many ways. And just to kind of recap when I look at travel and what it's done for my life personally, there's a few things that I've gotten from that. And there's three that I would bucket them. Just being open, and that's open to new people, new food. New Orleans really exposed me to a lot of new food that I love, but so did Boston and Africa and everywhere I've lived. New hobbies, just a new way to think about life when you go there and see how folks live differently, just, shoveling snow versus a hurricane. Perspective, understanding the differences and appreciating those differences, and how you grow and how you look at life differently when you see how many ways we live it across the globe. And then gratitude. I think I'm a forever transplant because I don't have roots anywhere anymore. And my life is made of just crashing into native worlds, so to speak. And so I have just such gratitude for the now in my world and the people in my life. And really, when you think about it again, the things don't really matter to your experiences and the people that you meet along the way. So Mark Twain, I think for me, captures this. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all of one's lifetime. So that for me captures travel in a nutshell. And I know Chelsea's done a lot of travel as well. So I'll pass it over to her.
Amber, can I ask real quick before we move on, what brought you to Africa? How did you end up moving to Africa?
I'd always heard about the Peace Corps. I have hippie parents. And so I was living in Tampa, and it was, I think in the back of a magazine, there was another ad for Peace Corps. I was like, that was always my dream as a kid. So just signed up for the Peace Corps, and you can pick a continent back then. So I picked Africa because it was just always where I wanted to go. And they placed me in Guinea, West Africa, which is so funny because when you look at the map to see where hurricanes start, they start off the coast of Guinea. So I have to get to look and see like, what are you sending me, Guinea? And I worked for just over 2 years in I was a public health volunteer. So I lived in a little village and worked in a health center there.
That's very cool. And then looking at, like you said, those experiences helping you, you've learned like stay open to new cultures, new ideas, the perspective and the gratitude. And like you said, always being a transplant. Scott, you're a transplant.
Forever transplant. When you said that, I understand. Yep.
Forever transplant.
Forever.
Yeah.
Anywhere that I mentioned to Scott that we go, he's like, oh man, I love that place. I'm like, of course you've been there. Just Amber as well.
Of course you do.
Chelsea, tell us about your travel experiences and your background.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I've been with Ochsner for 6 years. I guess I'm almost a transplant at Ochsner. I've held a lot of different roles within this organization. I started in TA, and I've done employee relations, and then now in this more transplanted into the facilities or the operations of the organization. Leading up to today, I did a lot of reflection, I guess, over the weekend. My mom's in town helping with the kids since we didn't have school last week. So I talked to her, a little bit about it as well. And I think I can honestly say travel is probably one of the largest top 5 probably influences on my life. I guess maybe different from Amber, travel's always been a part of my life as long as I can remember, really. My parents divorced when I was pretty young, about 6. And so the vast majority of my time spent with my dad was on vacation. So lots of good memories. We traveled really the world. Growing up, every winter we would go skiing somewhere new. So, Colorado, Utah, Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota, by the way. And every summer we would go, to the beach. So Florida and California and the Caribbeans and really all over. And in high school, I took my first trip to Europe. We went to London and Paris, a couple other places. And Amber and I didn't rehearse the impacts on our life, but I think perspective was one of the words that came to me over the weekend. Just these diverse experiences truly kind of shaped me into who I am today and being a little more open-minded. I'm from a town of 5,000 people in rural Minnesota. So had I not been able to broaden my experiences beyond small town Minnesota, I probably would be a very different person today. So now I have my own 2 little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and wanting to share those same experiences with them. So when my husband and I got married, we decided we would go to a new state every year for our anniversary. So we just celebrated our 7 years over Hurricane Ida. We had planned a trip a year ago to Yellowstone. So similar to Molly, your story of there was a lot of anxiety leading up to this trip. We had to change our flight. Thankful for a leader at Ochsner. And to those of you who don't know, Amber is actually my leader here at Ochsner. Had a conversation with her, I think at about 5:30 in the morning when I was freaking out and saying, should I go? Should I cancel? What should I do? So thankful for a leader who told me to go. So we got to spend 8 days in Wyoming, exploring Yellowstone, and we went to the Grand Tetons, and it was great. We stayed in a tent, we stayed in a teepee, we stayed in a cabin, we stayed in a treehouse. So it's just lifelong memorable experiences. So it's just really fun to see my kids grow in their travel and their perspective, and you learn so much while you're on vacation. But it's great. Yeah.
Do
that's
the
a little
kids
bit about
go
me.
with y'all on the trips now?
They do, yeah.
Oh,
They always have. We only had one anniversary without a kid. So they've been on every one of them since the first one. So,
and you have,
hopefully they'll continue.
You have, tell us about the visual that y'all have that kind of tracks where you go.
Yeah. I'll see if I can figure out how to quickly turn off my video filter. Me and the kids actually last night had to quickly scramble to scratch off Wyoming.
And I love what you mentioned. You kind of snuck it in there. Talk to your leader, and we here know that Amber's amazing, but going to talk to your leader when you're worried and you're stressed and should I go, having that conversation, because I guarantee they're going to find a way and help you take that vacation.
Yeah. So this is our family map of the United States. So you can see how we scratch off every year. So we just scratched off Wyoming. We've done, 6 other states. So my husband and I, as I was planning for today, we talked last night about, okay, we only have a certain number of years before our son graduates from high school, which is like a crazy thought to think about. So how are we going to prioritize the rest of these states to make sure that our kids go to where we want them to go before they graduate and maybe not come with us anymore?
Cherry picking it. Is that picture, is it something that is made that way that whenever you scratch it off, the color is underneath it?
Yeah.
So for those listening in the podcast, it's basically a map of the United States to kind of give y'all a visual. It's a map of the United States that you can see your state, and they look kind of like an olive greenish color. And then when she scratches it off, there's something under it that sort of represents, it's the name of that state, but also color or an image or something that represents that state. And it's framed, and it's something that is pretty. It looks like, art that you would have on your wall, yet it's also kind of a visual representation. So that's really, I would imagine there's those for the US, or there's those for other locations, but that's like a really cool way to kind of like, it's I think even better than the map where you stick a pin and where you've gone. You can see that a lot easier. Yes. And Eleanor is messaging us through the Zoom chat that you can do a worldwide one like that as well, that has the scratch off maps. So that's a really cool, especially whether it's kids or not. But I mean, I think especially with kids, kind of giving that visual to see everywhere they've gone. And Eleanor is letting us know too that they have those on Amazon. So just a cool visual, and just makes it neat to see. We have, when we have tried to decide and plan big trips, we wanted a map of the United States, and it's not nearly as cool as what Chelsea has, but we bought a placemat because it was laminated. Maybe it was like for kids to learn the map of the world while they're, at their meals at the table. But for us, it's laminated. We could have it. We could kind of mark it up on things, and it's
salmon on it.
Eat salmon on it. It's multi-purpose. So very, very interesting, experiences of travel. And I can see, whenever we reached out, I knew that Amber had traveled a lot. I didn't know that Chelsea had such a passion for it. And so y'all are both very passionate and enthusiastic to speak to this topic of HR and travel and why it's so important. So with that, we talked a little bit about how travel has shaped y'all, how travel has influenced your life. And talk to us about, Scott kind of just alluded to it a bit ago, but how do you even bring up a conversation about taking time off? And, a lot of our podcast listeners aren't going to be in the New Orleans area or South Louisiana area. Most of our Zoom viewers are, or at least in an area that's been affected. But even beyond Ida, because right now it's a little unusual, but even beyond the aftermath of a hurricane, take that out of the question. There's still a lot of times people just don't think they can or they should take vacation.
Yeah. And we did do a little bit of research here because we know the same, Chelsea and I. And so we do have some fun facts that we'd like you guys to guess on before we talk the logistics of taking time off, if that works. You ready?
Love fun facts.
All right. So Chelsea and I have got 4 questions for you. This is fill in the blank. What percent, well, no, it's not. I'll just ask you. What percent of Americans did not use all of their allotted vacation days? This is the most recent data we have, which I think is 2018, 2019.
And we've got people entering it into the chat too.
95%, 80%. I'm going to guess, I was going to go 65.
We've got
Jennifer James, you're on the way.
Yes, we've got them coming through at 95%, 80, 50, 65, 70% are the guesses. 75.
All right. Well, without going over, I'll play by those rules. It is 55%. So it sounds like we may have a different Ochsner issue we'll talk through, but it is 55% of do not use their, but that's still more than half of working Americans do not use their vacation, which is, that makes me sad.
And so 55, 5. Yeah. Wow. Do not use it.
Yes.
And this is, they've got it. I have someone who messages me. He's a regular listener of this podcast. He's probably listening right now. Actually, I'll say his name, Tommy. We're not violating anything. Nobody knows who Tommy is except I do. He has so much vacation accrued. I don't know that he's ever taken vacation, ever. And he just has like so much of it. And it's like, you need to take this time for yourself. So Tommy, listen up, listen to Amber and Chelsea.
Shout out to Tommy. My second question. So we have an average of, and again, this is a broad average, 17.4 vacation days per person. So this is going to be a big number, but how many actual vacation days in the millions are left on the table every year? In the millions.
In the millions.
55% not using it. What do y'all think?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start with that.
It just makes me sad to think about it. So
yeah, that's a lot of time of cool places not visited.
Very specific, 8.4 million.
Jennifer James had a 500 in there.
500 million, 2.4 million.
I'm going to give it to Jennifer. It's 768 million vacation days.
Wow.
That is just shocking. Yeah.
Wow.
And Eleanor had a question I saw in the chat too, and it was around a pandemic. We'll talk about that in a second because that's also a factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So having the next one. So what percentage, we're going back to percentage, but what percentage of full-time employees report that they work on weekends, holidays, or even when they have planned vacation days, they're still working? What percentage of people? Tommy says 70, Ashley 20, Catherine says 75%, Jennifer, James 40%, 85, 60, 60. Okay, let me see who's closest. So without going over, I guess Ashley is closer. So it's 30%. 30% of full-time employees report working on weekends and holidays and even on planned vacation days. So a little bit going into Eleanor, your question of the pandemic effect. So this is more of a recent data point. So what is the number? So this is an actual number of minutes that we are now on average spending more at work every day.
More than
an 8-hour day, we're saying.
Yeah, normally you have 8 hours. Let's say normally you have 8 hours in a day. So how many minutes more are we spending? So Eleanor says 75. Jennifer says 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 59 minutes, 45 minutes. All of you who said 45 minutes, you're getting very close. On average, we spend 48.5 minutes more every day at work. And that was a more recent data point. So some hard data, hard facts that we uncovered in this research, but I think we all know it and we all feel it. This is just some data to put to what we're all feeling. So Amber's going to talk a little bit about the benefits of travel, and then we'll get into how to go have that conversation with your leader.
Yeah, the commute question that Eleanor asked about including commute has been interesting because across America, a lot of folks are more from home, which I think is blurring those lines of work, extending their days, plus everything that's been going on with the pandemic. So I will be really interested to see the data post-pandemic, let's knock on wood when that ends, around what did we do the last 2 to 3 years and how it changed how we take time off. So Chelsea and I did talk about the benefits that we've experienced, but research is going to show you a lot of things from not taking time off. So we're just going to go through a few facts. And Scott, we're going to get to your question on how do we even talk about taking time off with our leader, which we're also good. Spoiler alert, going to ask your opinions on too as leaders here of the organization. So spending time working weekends and holidays, we know sometimes we have to, but it really does undermine your intrinsic motivation. I think we all Intrinsic is that thing that's just naturally there, and it feeds you just based on your role versus something like money, for example. And so when you have that, without having that down leisure time, you're going to have that conflict between personal and professional goals. I'm not working weekends. I'm working weekends, so I'm not reading the way I used to read, and that's going to make you enjoy work less. I see Molly nodding, I see Scott nodding. So of course, chime in any examples that you have, but you really want to try to have that boundary of work and personal to make sure you can fully live both. It also results in, if you take a vacation, so on the flip side, it results in improved productivity, lower stress, better overall mental health. I know Susan's been helping a lot with that front and making sure we have access and everyone's aware of what we have across the organization there. Also increases resiliency, and however long we've been in this, I think we all need some more resiliency, and so we can keep growing that skill set, which is often really challenging. It also provides perspective that can help us be more creative and see new solutions. I think I talked about that in traveling other countries. This is a very simple example, but it was something I didn't think about because I don't work with a lot of rocks, but I worked at the health center, and we had a ton of rocks that were around the health center so we could see scorpions easier. So a plastic bag fell down that we were putting food in for these kids for the World Food Program. And the plastic bag fell down, and I would have to walk down 10 steps onto the rocks to grab the bag. A kid was down there, picked up a rock, wrapped the bag around it, and threw it up to me. And I was like, oh, wow. And that's very simple, but I would not have thought to do that. So when you think about going and just seeing how people are different and different new solutions, that one popped into my head. And then spending time outdoors. Chelsea just did this. And so I selfishly was like, yo, get out of here. Ida's coming, but send me all the pictures you can because I need to see the nature. And so being outdoors is really, it benefits you both physically and mentally. And then lastly, I think a lot of times we're like, oh, let's just get out of town for the weekend. And that can be good and sounds fun and positive, but planning a vacation, which I really love to do, it gives you that something to look forward to, and planning that 3 months in advance and seeing where you're going to go and talk to people who have been there. It's just this atmosphere of growth that's created and reduces your chance of canceling and really has that build up and for this really great time off, hopefully. So those are the benefits. Molly, Scott, anything you would add as leaders here?
We've talked about the planning part also starts to put you in that space. It starts you and it's putting you in a different place and learning about that culture. You're already almost starting that vacation early by doing the planning.
That's what I was going to say. It's fun. It's just fun. You can go down a wonderful rabbit hole planning. I personally, I'm with you, Amber. I love planning, and I also love not planning. I love arriving. So I'm kind of a mixture of both, but yeah. I know that drives a lot of people nuts.
I do think
my husband would want me to plan less. Sorry, Molly.
No, and this is one of those like HR, put your earmuffs on because you know how they are. Whenever we travel, especially if I'm going to be gone for more than just a few days, to me, it feels even more overwhelming if I get back to hundreds or thousands of emails that are just unread. So I set aside a dedicated block, and it's short. Usually it might just be 30 minutes that I'm going to look at that. And I have in my out of office email, I have that I'm going to be out of office. I have who to contact, who, if anything is needed. So a lot of times that time is intercepting something that can be directed to whoever can and work with this in my absence, but they wouldn't know it otherwise. And so it helps me feel like when I come back, I'm not drowning under that. And so not everyone is that a fit for, but for me, that's my preference versus not. My husband's the opposite. A lot of times he will say, I'm not even going to look at it, because when he does, his job is different. And the things that are coming across his emails, they may change his disposition or his mood, his state of mind. For me, it's not typically that. I'm enjoying whatever things are coming through there. So for him, he'll say, I'm not going to look at it at all. Well, then that window of time that he's not going to look at it, when he does, it's incredibly overwhelming. Or he'll think it's that barrage. So it's kind of finding, I think, for you what works in that, and making sure, though, if you are setting that, you stick to those boundaries. A tip is also to move anything to a separate screen on your phone, to where if you're looking at your phone to access your camera, for example, you're not seeing your emails right there. You've got those on that last page or whatever that might be.
And Amber, to speak to bringing up you and Chelsea having a discussion, I think Ochsner has set up, at least for us clinically, I have the chance to work with my team, run with my team. I know when they need a vacation. They don't have to say it. It's written all over their face. And we have those discussions preemptively, even if it's just a day here or there. What are you planning? What's coming down? What's coming up? What's your next 6 months? So I really like to push that because I want to make sure that they're not burnt out. The health of our clinic, which leads to the health of our patients, is conducive to them needing that break. And so we really push it.
Yeah. That's good. And that's what Chelsea's about to talk to, is the time to talk. So I think more tips like that, talking about your next 6 months, which Chelsea and I try to do as well. Going back to that fact that over half of Americans don't take all of their vacation times. And the reasons we see, which might, fit with Ochsner or be a little different, are 36% feel like 36% have too much work to walk away from. And then 16% of millennials, but I hesitate to say that in there because I think it's probably a broader stroke there, didn't request time off because they were too nervous to ask. And so to your point, Scott, talking that with your leaders, and what Chelsea's going to walk through is talking to your leader about taking time off. And I would love to hear your perspective as well.
I had that situation, as you talk about, with, I guess she's considered a millennial. And I asked her if it was okay if I shared her story. She said yes. And so she's one of our Eat Fit dietitians on our team. And she had been a teacher before, a teacher with a charter school and, outside of New Orleans in a different state before she became a dietitian. And where she worked, she was an admin. She was a teacher, then she went into admin, and it was just cranking it out and extreme demands on time. The culture there was that you did not take time away during the school year. You did not take vacation. If you did, the messaging that was not so subtly conveyed to you is that you were letting your team down. You were leaving everyone in a lurch. And so therefore, no one took time off, not a day, not a single day. And so it was this spring, she messaged me and said, "Do you have a minute to talk? Can you come by my office?" And I thought, oh, is something wrong? Because normally the question just comes. So I stop in, is everything okay? And she was nervous, visibly nervous, as Amber said. And she was asking, we had our big alcohol free for 40 event. We had our finale labs and all this that was going to happen. And then the next week was Easter. And she wanted to go visit her family for Easter. She hadn't been home in a year and a half, with the pandemic, with everything else. She had done her internship. She hadn't seen them in a year and a half. But she was nervous to ask, number one, to go home. I said, "You haven't seen her?" "Yes, this is perfect timing. Our big event will be wrapped up. It's Easter. That's a perfect time." She's like, "I can bring my computer and still work from there." And I was like, "You haven't seen your family in a year and a half. You don't need to work while you're there. You have the vacation time. You've earned it. You take this. This is," and then she thanked me. And I was like, "Don't thank me. There's other things, maybe thank me. This is not something to thank me for. This is just as it should be." But it was that exact, Amber, just as you said, she was nervous. She was very hesitant to even ask for that time off.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to speak to that point that I think Ochsner has evolved as well. So I've been here longer than I want to admit, and it was not always as friendly to take time off because there were other demands. We were bouncing back from different things. It has evolved. We have seen that our employees are so valuable, that we want to take care of them. We want to preserve them as much as we want to take care of our patients. And that evolution, sometimes people don't see it. They remember maybe the way it was 15 years ago. It is not the same. It is easier to ask for time off, and it is needed to take that time. So that's where I would implore anyone who's had difficulty 10 plus years ago getting time off. That's not the way it is now. And that's the message we're trying to get across to all of our staff.
That's a really great point.
I think what I hear, Molly, you saying in your employees' prior organization, and Scott, what you're talking about, I think this whole conversation does start with culture. It starts with the culture of the organization. It starts with the culture of the team. And one thing before we jump into talking about tips for talking with your leader, I think it's important also to recognize, which it sounds like Molly, Scott, you both are doing fantastically, is remember that you're setting the example for your team when it comes to taking time off and working while you are off. So as we, talk about some of these statistics of people, not taking the time that they have or working while they are scheduled to be off, just as a reminder that as leaders, we're setting that example. So make sure that we're maybe setting the right example to all extents, possible. So we've talked a little bit about this already, where, timing is everything with this conversation, the timing of going to make that request, thinking about your surroundings and what's maybe happening in like your business cycle. I know Ochsner, especially our division, the health and wellness division, we have different kinds of businesses within our umbrella. So it's important to think about, what are your business cycles? Are there times where volumes are high in the year? Are there times where volumes are low? So consider that as much as possible as you're thinking about the timing of going to have this conversation. When we were just in this fourth surge of COVID, maybe not the best time to go ask for extended time off. But again, it's important to have the right relationship with your leader, so that if an emergency happens, or if your best friend is planning to get married, they probably didn't anticipate a fourth COVID surge when they decided their date a year ago. So, it's important to think about the timing, but also don't let that hold you back from going to have the conversation if you need to. But giving as much notice as possible, I think, is important when you talk about this timing piece. Scott, I love that you're talking to your team about, what's 6 months out. 6 months is enough time to make plans for that person being out of the office, versus if they maybe just spring it on you a week before they're planning to be out. It's a little more difficult to plan for that absence. So it's all around being considerate is really, I think, what it kind of boils down to, is being considerate to your organization, being considerate to your leader, considerate to your team members, because the absence does have an impact, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take it. We should just plan for it. I mentioned a little bit about the relationship. I think that's important to consider is, what is your relationship with your leader? Maybe you're brand new to the team, and so you haven't had time to build maybe a super solid foundation relationship with your leader. So I think it's important to just consider that if you have a formal relationship with your leader, you might need to, schedule a meeting to talk about it. It sounds like that's what Molly's employee was trying to do, is schedule specific time to talk about this request because she was nervous, versus maybe you have more of an informal, casual relationship with your leader, to where, in a random one-on-one, you might just be able to make the request. So think about what kind of relationship you have with it and how formal your request needs to be. I was telling Amber this while we were planning for today. So this was pre-Amber, a different leader in a different organization, where I made a mistake in this whole process and wanted to share that with you all, so maybe you don't make the same mistake. But don't make plans before you receive permission to go on vacation. I had made a vacation request and booked my airfare and my hotel and everything, and come to find out I didn't actually have permission to go on that vacation. So it was it was a hiccup in the experience and the relationship, rather. So I think I just share that only to say it's important to be clear, transparent in that conversation with your leader. And also remember that your vacation, it is a request. It's not a demand, and it does need to have approval from your leader. So just make sure you have the full conversation before you go book those flights. And then the last two things, before I want to ask Scott and Molly your perspective on this question too. But we mentioned kind of being courteous. So to your coworkers. So as you think about holidays throughout the year, if you have a small team and only a few of you, or maybe only one of you, can be off for that specific holiday, maybe get with your team to divvy out those holidays, to say, who's going to take Christmas this year? Who's going to take Easter? So you're doing the work as coworkers, as colleagues, to help your leader, so your leader doesn't have to make that hard choice, because it is a hard choice, and it's much easier if we can all agree together as a team than to have our leader make that decision for us. And then Amber's going to talk a little bit about preparation, but Scott, from that perspective, I know you have managed small teams in the past, and So from a holiday perspective, how have you found that to work when you think about who gets Christmas and who gets Easter?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
What are your thoughts?
So I've managed large and small teams, and the small team and the large team, same thing. What we call it wheel and dealing. So we just sit down together as a team. And I always have who had the holidays previously. The past couple of years, I have that down. And then we just talk it out. Who needs what, who wants to travel, who hasn't had this holiday. And it's an evolving thing. And it does change throughout the year, but we have that discussion in January for the entirety of the year. And then we revisit it 6 months later. But it's not just holidays. So I will say that many of those tough, difficult conversations that we've had, like you mentioned, you didn't have the time off. I've had that talk where someone else had the time off. So we just have a meeting. We wheel and deal. They've traded days off and we've made it work. But it only comes about if you have that conversation with your leader and your team. So the message can't be sent enough. You need to talk to your leader. You need to let your team know. Because ultimately they're going to find a way to make sure you can do what you need to do, but not if you don't have the conversation. But we wheel and deal a lot.
Amber and Chelsea, what if someone has a leader that is resistant? Like Chelsea, I'm curious with yours when you were declined, was it declined because there was a specific reason that you were needed at that moment, that there was things were going to be spread too thin, or there was like a concrete reason that you understood? Or was it a little bit more of, well, no, because I said so type?
Yeah. So in that specific example, I did actually get to go. So I still got the approval to go, but it was more of the latter of what you were just describing. The please don't do this again without getting my approval. More of so that I can plan at my leader at the time, so that they can plan better for the absence and make sure that there was nothing going on. So yeah.
What is some advice for people whose leaders are not as, I guess, encouraging of travel as Scott is, or as I am, or y'all are? Like, how do you have these conversations if you have someone who's resistant or sort of in that culture that I was talking about that our dietitian came from, where it's really discouraged and you were essentially, like we said, not so subtly implied that you were letting your team down. What does someone do in those situations?
I mean, I think it's that dialogue. I know we're shifting to Scott's point. This is not where we were X number of years ago. So if I were talking to you, Molly, and asking for time off and you were hesitant, what are the considerations I need to know before coming in for time off with you? It really is. It is a benefit that we have that we need to fully leverage and, share what I know you also don't need to share everything about your time off, but why is it important to you as a team member? I've got a family and, to Chelsea's point, I want our kids to see America, and this is something that's important to us for our anniversary. If you need to share facts, we'll of course get this podcast out to say this is going to make me more productive. And, depending on your leader's style, like what do you need to go into? Is there a concern your leader has that he or she is not expressing that you need to say, oh, if it's worried about X project or X coverage, I can help you with that. But I'm sure you guys have had this before. So what have you seen that's worked for somebody who may not be as, resistant, or maybe more resistant?
And I'm thinking more outside of the Ochsner system. I'm thinking of our podcast listeners who are outside of the Ochsner system, or maybe in a different, a friend of mine works for a very small organization, and it's and sometimes it can be tough because I think of one friend, there's two people that run a particular space. And if one's not there, the other has to be. And so you really only have one other person as a backup. So you always have to coordinate that someone's going to be on site to run this facility. But I think, like you said, maybe if you do have a leader or a boss or your manager or whatever you call them, even, no matter how big or small it is, going to them in advance. So like Chelsea was saying, timing is everything. Maybe go to them with a little bit of why this is important to you and how this would benefit. Would it be something to talk about how it might benefit your job or professionally, how it could benefit them?
Yeah, I'm curious to think. So if I'm somebody who's resistant to taking time off, and they probably don't model it, is my guess. So it really is trying to frame up what they need. So that person is resistant for a reason. Even for Chelsea, it's more of it's no because I said so. There's probably something behind that. And so really, for me to take time off, it's important to me because X, Y, or Z, share as much as you can and want, but what will help you feel better, or how can I help you feel successful or not be worried? Because there is something behind that resistance. And it may be they're a workaholic. And at the end of the day, if they're a workaholic, you're going to do what's the most important to you. And if that culture of that organization is in line with yours, I'm not saying quit, but I'm saying, make sure that your culture is in line with your values. But again, there's usually something at the root that if you ask, the 5 whys or get in there with them, you can figure out what they need to feel more comfortable with you leaving for a period of time.
Can you share the 5 whys?
I asked why 5 times.
Oh, it is that.
So it's 5 whys. Yeah. Because that'll help you get to the root. So why? And then you get to it's because you yourself don't take whatever. So it really helps you get out of that superficial first answer to the root.
So timing. And then I think a big thing that I heard y'all say is having a plan or helping them plan for coverage in your absence.
I was going to say the best conversation I've ever had with someone who came to me asking for time off. It was a new therapist, had worked for years with another clinic, and came in and knew the time off policy, knew who was working, knew that it was the days that he was asking for were not popular days to have off, and he had all that prepared to ask me for time off. I thought, this is amazing, but yeah, you could have it. It's okay. Like we'll figure it out. He was so prepared and so concerned that it was going to be a no that he took the time to really delve into what the policy was, and what his team was doing. And of course I rewarded him for that, but he didn't need to do all that, but it was amazing to speak to that question.
Yeah.
What can somebody do? Is just understand the business, understand who's there, understand your team, and understand the policy.
And ultimately not being afraid to do that. Not being afraid to ask, and listening or re-listening to this podcast if you needed to, but to kind of get the inspiration and kind of get that moral support to take the step if you do feel fearful, if you have run into these roadblocks before. It can be a scary conversation. You can feel, and I think in some of those, it's just like any other hard conversation. Sometimes even saying the words out loud a few times before you're going in for that meeting, even hearing yourself say things, whatever it takes, but realizing that all those stats that Chelsea and Amber talked about, we are not taking the time off that we need. It's so essential for our own personal well-being. All the different experiences that Chelsea and Amber talked about of how it shaped them, it has framed who they are as people today. It's essential that we get out of our normal routine and our day-to-day to give ourselves that experience. So if you are someone that has a boss, a manager, a supervisor that is resistant to it, trying to take some of these tools, these resources, Chelsea and Amber, would y'all be open that if anybody did reach out with questions that we could pass them along to y'all?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Yeah. I'll put a link in our podcast notes too of like where to reach out to me, and I can pass it on to y'all if so.
And there's a great question that came in. How much advance notice should be given realistically when asking for time off? And I think that, again, pulls into knowing your division, knowing your business, knowing your team. But if you want to expound on that at all.
Yeah, I think for me, the easiest answer to that question is as much as possible. So for me, I have a trip every September 6th because that's my anniversary. So, hypothetically, I could ask Amber for every September 6th off for the foreseeable future because I know that that's a week that my family goes on vacation. But if there is something that's an impromptu request, something unexpected, I think you have to ask your leader as soon as you know that you need the time off. So I know that doesn't exactly answer the question, but as much as possible, I think is probably the best answer. I don't know, Amber, if you had any other thoughts.
Yeah, I think Scott and Molly would agree there. I mean, as much as you can, especially if it's a week long, more than just a long weekend where something would potentially be able to be covered on Monday. So the more the better. But we understand that things happen and, life does happen. And if you have the ability to take time off with, to Scott's point earlier, that preparation, if you come fully prepared, it's really hard to say, this is not going to work.
Great information. And just good guidance, y'all. I know we have just a few minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't covered, Amber, Chelsea, that y'all want to make sure people have as takeaways?
Yeah, there's a couple other tips that we will just throw out there. I think when you see folks prepare for vacation, there's typically two buckets that it falls into, where you're got to complete all the work before you leave. And oftentimes that's not possible. And just the fact that you're away. Molly, you referenced this earlier with the fact that you look at emails, not fully disconnecting, but that works for you. That's fine. HR doesn't have your mouth. But by the way, like the questions that people think are, what if I'm out and somebody notices that I haven't done something? That's a true fear. What if I'm out and something falls through the cracks? What if somebody needs me? And what if I'm not looked at as a bad person or not really fully committed for taking time off? And then once you have all of that rolling through your head, what are you going to do? You're going to overwork to get this stuff done. So you go into vacation stress where maybe you just want to sleep the entire time, or you work while you're on vacation. And so a little just quick tips here. Plan ahead. Scott, you said it. Put a meeting on your calendar. Block 2 days, weeks before that you're going out. So 3 to 4 weeks. So you can, if you have major projects or things that you even need to start transitioning, you do that ahead of time and you prioritize those must-do activities. You have a list of stakeholders. So Molly, if you had folks where if somebody's going to email you and it's regarding X, you go here automatically. You can even put that in your out of office. You may miss a couple people, but for those major items, how do you make sure that the teams know where to go, the key stakeholders internally and externally, if something pops up while you're away? Sometimes you'll go to a place that you really will not have service. And then what do you do? And then partnering with your peers and your team. They are your team for a reason. So when I go out, I have full faith that Chelsea's going to cover everything that pops up and prioritize as needed, and the same for her, along with our other team members there too. Because at the end of the day, when you walk away, that work is going someplace else. So as much as you can partner and prepare your team, the better it's going to be for you all. So those were just some tips, general tips. And that's really all we had. And if you can, really unplug, please. That would be the last one.
So when you were talking about that, Amber, I just had a memory. I was on this cornice up in Wolf Creek, Colorado. It took me about 2 hours to hike up to this spot to drop in on my snowboard. And I took my phone out to change the music, and I got a phone call from someone here at the clinic. And I answered it. And it was the worst decision I ever made, because that ruined my ride. But it got taken care of. It was fine, but it was my problem. It wasn't theirs. They just tried to get a hold of me, see if I could help. It was my fault that I answered it. So I really, since that phone call, I really do try to disconnect whenever I leave.
Do you know what works for things like that too? Is airplane mode.
Genius.
Yeah, because then nothing comes through. You can access your phone for camera all the time, and you're not having texts or calls or anything like that. Mm-hmm.
Well, my deal with my wife is I have to send her a picture before I jump into anything. So I have to get my phone out, send a picture so she knows she can send it to someone to find my body. That's what she says.
It's horrifying and hilarious. On that note.
Yeah, sorry. It took a turn.
Yeah. Wow. That's really dark, Scott.
From relaxing, I'm fine. I'm just laying in the snow, relaxing.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are all important to the organization, but I promise you the job will go on and we'll all be okay. It's really the end. I know we're all critical, but you can take a week away from it.
I do think that's a really big note that we haven't said is something I don't think we've emphasized that enough, that, in whatever your role is, a lot of times there is so much that you're doing day to day, week to week, and you're like, how can I step away? And what Amber just said, everybody can step away. And I love that our leaders are doing it and we're seeing them doing it. They're Deidre of our health and wellness division, our VP. She's, when she goes on vacation, she can be reached if it's an emergency, but she's going to take that time off, and she's taking that time and protecting that time for her. And that's an incredible example to trickle down to us. And so I think we can look to people like that to say, if that person can step away and really enjoy their vacation, I can too, So awesome. Well, thanks y'all so much for your time. I think this has been one that is insightful, inspiring. So I hope that this has given a nudge to some people maybe who were a little hesitant to ask.
Thanks for having us, y'all. It was
Yes, thank you.
fun to talk about maybe something a little different sometimes.
Yes. And y'all's first
really
podcast,
is.
y'all did great.
Yeah. And just,
Yeah.
if there's
Our
any
first
takeaway from
podcast.
this, don't eat salmon on an airplane.
Bye, guys. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time. I'm always grateful to Scott Wonke for being my co-host and partner in crime in the Dream Bold travel series, and grateful to Ochsner and our Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions team for encouraging us and supporting and giving us the time and the resources to lead this Dream Bold initiative, and within that, this travel series. As always, as you're incorporating any of these into your life, if you're having conversations that are challenging, if you've got questions for our HR team, you heard they're happy to answer any questions. I'll put contact information. I'll put a specific email in the podcast episode notes. It is our Dream Bold team email. You can send your email there. I will pass it along to the HR team, and they will happily answer and help to give you some of that advice, some of that guidance. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.